Greetings, race community. Brent coming in live from Charleston, South Carolina. As my family and I continue our voyage, I'm excited to be joined by Kim Nyoni, who is the AVP of Development at UNLV. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you, Brent. Glad to be here with you.
Well, I'm really excited to learn more about your story on a personal level. One of the things I've been doing with recent guests is asking them, before we get into your career and development, let's talk about your own path to higher education. And I want you to think back to the Kim that was 16, 17 years old, thinking about his future, what ultimately shaped your path to higher education. And it was different than most of our guests.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for that. As you know, I think I shared, I was born and raised in a country called Tanzania in East Africa. And I attended high school in we call it secondary school at a number of boarding schools in Nairobi, Kenya. And so I came from that background of a family that really valued education, because education had been the key to allowing my parents to be successful. My dad was born in a village. I mean, he didn't wear shoes until he was in high school. Okay, so he came from a very, very impoverished part of the country, but it was his attending a seminary school that was run by the Catholic Church that basically helped him, be successful. And that led him to go to Cambridge University in England, where he got his education. And my mother was, raised by a father who was a doctor, and so one of the first African doctors. And so she was more fortunate than my father financially. So, but still was able to attend university and retired as an accountant. And so that's the background that I came from, where it was expected that you do pursue higher education, because higher education was the key to your future accomplishments and success. And so I was, finishing boarding school.
Kim, can I ask, like, growing up in Tanzania, hearing your dad talk about his time at Cambridge, what was that like? I mean, it had to almost seem, were you able to visit early on in your career? I mean, just what was your early impression of the impact that Cambridge had on your father's life?
Well, he always talked fondly about that time when he had gone to the local university, and then from there he gets a full ride to go to Cambridge. And it says, that really opened his eyes, to see the world differently. Because when he was younger at the time, the country was a socialist country. So, the government controlled everywhere that you go. As a matter of fact, when he was, as fate would have it, when he was in college in Cambridge, he had an opportunity to go to Princeton, on a Ford Foundation fellowship. So he was going to be an academic. But then the government said, no, you can't go because we want you to go run a co-op in the middle of nowhere, Tanzania. So they went back to the Ford Foundation and said, well, we actually have somebody else that we want to send, from our country. And they said, well, of course not. We're going to move this fellowship to another country. So, but that was a very transformative time for him, and in exposing him to different culture, different way of doing things, and it kind of planted that seed of entrepreneurship and that basically led him to the academy as a management professor, and then working in banking for his entire career. And so for me, seeing those stories were inspiring. And then when I was finishing boarding school, I was actually looking to move to Australia. I was admitted to law school in Australia, and in a British system, you don't have to go do 4 years and then go law school. You can go straight. But my parents did not want me to move so far, and we had some family here in Nebraska. And so next thing you know, I go home. They say, well, pack your bags. You'll be moving to Nebraska in a month. And so I go from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, a city of 7 million people, to Lincoln, Nebraska, with a grand total of 225,000 people in the middle of nowhere, United States.
Kim, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that on the entire African continent that year, there were not too many people considering either Australia or Lincoln, Nebraska. So I think you really were in a unique part of the admissions landscape. I don't know how many other folks were thinking through those options, but
yes, you're right on. And but I'll tell you though, I mean, when I think of what makes me who I am, professional and everything else, I mean, I look at my time that I spent as a 17-year-old moving to Nebraska and living there until I was 25 as being
had you been there before?
never,
Had you been to the U.S.
never.
before?
I'd never been to the U.S. I'd never been to
Wow.
Nebraska, and so I just dropped there.
So you drop in.
Yep.
What's week one? I mean, take me back to orientation. What are the thoughts going through your head? Any like early memories where you just felt like this is the place for me?
I remember first day of orientation. We're doing new student orientation. We got a big festival, and the school spirit. Everybody wearing red, and everybody stopping and say, "Hi, how you doing? Are you okay?" It always felt weird. It's like, I don't know this person, right? But people were so friendly, and from the staff to the professors, just wanted to make sure that you felt at home. And for me, early impressions, I've never lived. I lived in Nairobi, Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, are very diverse cities. My boarding school was comprised of people from different nationalities and ethnicities. So I've always been around a sort of multicultural melting pot. Now, fast forward 1999, Lincoln, Nebraska. Okay, it's not necessarily the most diverse place in America. So that was a big shock to me. I'd never lived in any place that had such a high percentage of Caucasians. They're always very balanced communities. But what I do tell people is that even though it was not the most racially diverse environment, some of the best people in America, the nicest, salt the earth, will take off the shirt and give it to you, are from there. And so I'm always proud of the fact that I spent most of my formative years in Lincoln, Nebraska, and in the state of Nebraska.
And so, you go from probably not knowing what a Cornhusker is to becoming one. And I think, my understanding is getting pretty immersed in the culture and really buying into, just everything that makes Nebraska the great institution that it is. How'd you spend your time as a student? When did you feel like you really hit your stride? Were there specific programs, clubs you got involved with that helped? I mean, what really stands out?
So as an undergrad, my sophomore year is what I felt like I hit the stride, because initially, coming from the British system, our education was focused more on critical thinking, and you write essays. You unpack an idea through an essay. You don't do multiple choice. And so I spent the first year trying to figure out this multiple choice thing, because it was just not the way I was wired. And then once I got past that, I became involved with Pi Kappa Alpha fraternity. I was president of my pledge class, and I was in a number of different roles within the fraternity. I was also involved with we called it at that time the student union board. So we'll basically a group of students that work with the administration to decide what goes into the student union, what kind of services we offer, and things like that. And I also played rugby my first 2 years. I used to play rugby in high school, so I played 2 years in college. And I just got involved in many of the student government related things. I mean, I just really felt that, I was part and parcel of that community. I was a student ambassador. I mean, I did anything and everything that you could do outside of running for student body. For some reason at that time, I didn't think I wanted to go through that. I had a hate relationship with politics. And yeah, but it was it was a great experience. When I tell people, I say, look, Nebraska calls me, I give them money. Like, they don't even have to ask me. Like, I'll give them money. Why? Because working in the space that I work in advancement, I know the impact of giving. And I know I was fortunate enough to, my graduate education was paid for by Nebraska. Okay. And so if it wasn't for those funds available to the athletic department where I worked and the university in general, I would not have been able to, to afford, an education. And so, I owe that to them always. And so I'm always willing to pay
Love
for
it. Well, we work with a lot of the folks over there, and I'm gonna make sure you all get connected after this. But one thing that stood out to me is during your time, and maybe this was a segue to the athletics realm, you worked for Sports Illustrated, and I want to know more about that because as a student athlete growing up in Iowa, just next door, I mean, Sports Illustrated was, that was it at that time, and we didn't have cable, I didn't have ESPN, so it was always getting the Sports Illustrated or Sports Illustrated for Kids was like the highlight of the month. So, what was it like being a student representative for Sports Illustrated? What was the job?
Yeah, so I was looking to get into sports marketing as a professional career before I discovered this thing that we do here. And so as I was looking around different places, I came across Sports Illustrated on campus. As you recall, at that time, it was in the infancy stages of Facebook and all this social media craze. So, Sports Illustrated thought, well, why don't we develop a publication that is 100% focused on college athletics and lifestyle and what have you. And then we'll distribute that through the campus newspaper. And so that created an opportunity to have a Sports Illustrated on campus campus rep. And so it was an unpaid internship with a lot of great perks, so every week, I went online to Time Inc. and I submitted my resume. I get a call, you're hired. And so my job was to recruit 4 other interns and that will work with me to conduct guerrilla marketing campaigns on campus. So for instance, we had clients such as Doc Martens, and Doc Martens was launching a new product. So then my job will be to go, I'll get all this gear from Time Inc. And my job was to set up a booth on campus, give away, swag, and then host an event, to premiere a documentary that they were making. And so I would do that. And also in addition, every week, I had to ensure that the student magazine, newspaper was actually distributing the publication. And so then I'll call New York and say, okay, yep, this week, everything went well. We did what we were supposed to. And it was really, so we did such a great job. We were one of there were about 400 teams in the country. We were top 5. And so as a result of that, myself and the team, we'll go to a swimsuit party in New York. We'll represented the brand here in Las Vegas at the Magic Show, where all the vendors come and buy a product or select designers that I want to feature in their stores. I was part of a group of students that Sports Illustrated flew us in to stay over at the Palms and then go and speak on a panel about college fashion trends and things like that. So it was a really.
What are your classmates? That sounds pretty sweet. And by the way, Doc Martens and Sports Illustrated, that's my language right there. That's like peak late 90s. Just say Abercrombie and Fitch, and we're really talking
exactly.
Now. But so, what do your friends think of? This sounds like kind of a dream job. I guess you're saying you don't get paid, but you kind of get everything else that probably is worth more than money at that point. Yeah.
At that time, people thought it was, it's like, how'd you find out about this? This is crazy. So I say, hey, guess what? I was just in New York. I went to the swimsuit party. I was in New York and got to meet with a publisher, with the CEO, and we're talking the future of college sports and publications and things like that. It was to me, it was priceless. The experience, was priceless. And as a matter of fact, I had a job opportunity with them full time, but, personal events, my wife at the time, was finishing graduate work in San Jose. So I had to make that personal decision to forego a career in sports marketing in New York City to go to the Bay Area and work in athletics at Berkeley. So, and that opened the door. That opened the door to to my future in advancement.
So tell me about that. When did you know that advancement was a thing? When did you know? Certainly there's the intersection of athletics, which is part fundraising and then part other revenue generating activities. But at what point was it during your student time in Nebraska, or was it more when you got to Berkeley that you really understood that fundraising is a real business? 50 billion a year is being raised in this sector. Maybe not then, but now. When did that start to click?
So as I mentioned, during my time at Nebraska, I worked as a graduate assistant, in student affairs and then also in the athletic department. And during that time, I met a lady by the name of Barbara Hibner. She passed away years ago. But Dr. H, as we called her, was the first female athletic director for our program at Nebraska. I mean, she was very selfless, just very, very giving over time. What you see today at Nebraska athletics, in my opinion, would not, especially as it relates to women in athletics, those programs would not be there if it wasn't for Dr. H. I mean, she fought tooth and nail to get those programs going. And so early on, as I started working in the athletic department, she took me under her wing. And like she did with all the students, and we'll meet once a week. She'll give me a copy of Fast Company magazine and circle a few things that I should be thinking about and whatnot. And then she was telling me the story about how she had to go and solicit money to help, bootstrap, our programs, our women programs. Because, for instance, with the volleyball program, she secured the Coliseum, went and got donors. I should say, you got to think about this as a career. I said, really, me doing that? I mean, you actually get paid to do this, right? I said, oh, yes, you do. You see all those folks over in South Stadium that sit next to you. They always go into the greatest events. They always, hosting, really, really fun people. I think you got to think about that. So with that is sort of when I first got exposed to it. And so she helped me to try to figure out the next steps on how to get in those shoes. And it wasn't until I moved to Berkeley that finally I had an opportunity to start working at the High School of Business. And, she was supportive throughout that time too. Even though I'd moved to California, say, hey, how's it going? How are you progressing? How you like being in California? You'll do great things there. And then she passed away shortly after that. But it was rather unfortunate. She came down with cancer after 50 years of working. She retires, and boom, we lose her in no time. But I owe a lot of what I've been able to accomplish to her for pushing me that direction.
So transitioning to Berkeley, it's a very different part of the country. It's a different program. You're now selling someone else's mission that you maybe haven't experienced the way that you experienced it yourself personally at Nebraska. What was that early transition like? Was it seamless? Was it super difficult? I mean, what do you recall from that period in your career?
In a way, there are a lot of similarities between the culture of, say, Nebraska as a people and what I found at Berkeley. Now, granted, you're talking about two different parts of the country. One of the things about Berkeley that I cherish to this day is the fact that we're very focused on the mission of affecting student outcome and research and discovery. I mean, you go there, everybody was all in, and they were, whether it didn't matter if you were the dean, associate dean, vice chancellor, we all rode the same direction. I mean, you're at a campus with the big sort of change that was obvious was the fact that I'm surrounded by really, really, really incredible people. I mean, you got a parking lot full of Nobel laureates. I mean, you have to have won a Nobel Prize to park there, and that is something that not many campuses had. Okay, and the team, like I said, it was a culture of we, not I, and people who were very selfless. So for me, I couldn't have asked for a better place to start my career, and I couldn't have asked for better people to learn from. I mean, one of my early mentor in this field was a gentleman by the name of Larry Lawler. Larry Lawler years ago was vice president of Texas, and he was at Stanford, and then he came to Berkeley. But Larry was again one of those servant leaders that shepherded a big functional family of development and alumni relations at the High School of Business. But the way he carried himself, being focused on the mission, focus on people. I mean, he always preached all the time, people matter, and that made it a very seamless transition for me, and I was grateful for that opportunity.
And when along the journey did you start to really feel like this is not just my first job or a way to get to the San Jose area, but I could see this becoming my career path? Were there certain wins or experiences where you started to say, like, this is my path?
Yeah. So I right after my third year at Berkeley, I decided to relocate. And I went back to the Midwest, and I worked at this institution, and it was very clear quickly to me that culturally, this was not a compatible situation. For a guy who just came from Berkeley and is used to all that makes Berkeley great. And so shortly thereafter, I left and moved back to the Bay Area. And I was thinking, you know what, I'm gonna go back to private sector. That's more like me. But you know what, I had opportunities to go work in the Valley, doing biz dev, but it was just not in me. You know what I mean? I just did not feel that was the right decision. I felt that I was abandoning what I was passionate about. And so that point to me is when I said, okay, this is going to be a long haul, and I'm going to pursue this as my career. So it was a very, very interesting time, because things in the Bay were great, and I said, well, it's after '08, now we're good here. I'm gonna go out to the Valley and do what folks do in the Valley. But then I'm glad I didn't make that decision.
So you have had, or maybe not had to, but you've moved around, to pursue new opportunities, new institutions. Tell me about some of the, lessons you've learned when you think about joining a new institution. There's just so much to learn: the history, the culture, the people, the acronyms, the traditions. It's got to feel a little overwhelming, but at the same time, you've done that a couple of times now, and you must have, a philosophy or an approach on sort of what really matters up front versus what is the stuff that you can just absorb via osmosis over the coming, months and years.
To me, what matters up front is the culture and the mission of the institution. I mean, when I consider opportunities, early in my career, if I was advising somebody, my earlier self, I would say never let money be the factor that influences your decision making. Now, it may sound crazy, but at some point, the core values of the organization, the mission that they serve, and the culture trump any amount of money that they may throw at you. And if you approach this as, well, I'm just looking to be compensated, and I'll go based on that, you're going to be miserable, and you're likely not going to have a very long tenure at that place. So for me, when I look at these opportunities, I always think about, okay, what's their mission? Okay, when I meet with their leadership, what are they about as people? Not so much as practitioners, but who are they as people? How do they run the organization? And who are they serving? Is this more about student outcomes? Is this about local economic development, or is this institution about just purely research, and what kind of areas are they focusing on? So for me, if I have any question about, the mission, the core values, and the culture of the place, I don't even bother, pursuing those opportunities. So that's what I learned from some of the best that have done it. Is you meet the people, you spend time at the institution to understand what it's about, because at the end of the day, it's a two-way street. Okay, it takes two to tango, and just as much as they're interviewing you, you're interviewing them, and so you really have to ensure that you believe in that. I mean, I look at our mission over here at UNLV. I mean, we're very student focused. I mean, we're really into ensuring that our students experience social mobility, and we're serving mostly first generation students. Okay, to me, if that doesn't speak to you, why would you want to be there, right? But I can tell you, almost everybody to a person that is here, they are here because they believe in that. And so it's the belief in that will make you transcend any of the bureaucratic challenges that sometimes arise in our organization, because your eyes focus on the prize and not on these shifting sands that take place.
How do you feel that, though, in your role? I mean, I love that. I mean, whether it's your dad going from the village to Cambridge, or whether it's the first gen student getting access to UNLV, I mean, that's what gets me fired up to this day about this sector as a first gen, oldest of three kids who are all first gen. It's just like, that is what gets me fired up. But how do you keep your team connected to that impact when you're doing visits or doing the Zoom calls, meeting the donors, trying to hit the revenue goals? At times that can feel pretty far away from that one student who got the financial aid package that allowed him or her to go to UNLV. How do you kind of infuse some of that impact to keep your team centered on that mission?
Well, I believe, you have to, you have to demonstrate what you're asking, right? So as leaders, how we carry ourselves, how we speak about our organization, we model certain behavior, certain ways of doing things. And so if you're simply, harping that, hey, revenue at all cost, then you're going to have a culture that is focused on that. But if you are focused on and preaching about philanthropy, about understanding donors' passion and connecting that to the institution, and you're about that, revenue comes. Oftentimes, I'll tell people that I've worked with that are being on my team that we're here for the mission, and if you understand and embrace that, the opportunities for us to earn revenue are endless, because the donors that you deal with, they know that. I mean, when somebody really is into what the institution is trying to do. They can pick those who are mission focused and those who are just trying to get that gift agreement signed. And so that's what my approach has been in dealing with that.
Well, you might have just answered this question, though, because there's an element where you could have the passion and the belief in the mission, but you also got to do the work, right? You got to do the activities, and you got to bring the passion to it, or else the donors will see through it. But on one hand, you could have somebody who's super transactional, maybe not as mission oriented. On the other hand, you might have somebody who's like very mission oriented, but they're just not doing the work at the velocity that needs to get done. How do you kind of balance operational excellence, beating the goal without sacrificing in pursuit of the short-term dollar? I'm sure that's a tough question but I know you've worked with some folks that are real outperformers, where they're not only beating their revenue targets. I'm sure the feedback from the donors is they're great to work with and they're beating the revenue targets. But then I know you've worked with people who haven't hit their number, who haven't been able to perform. Do you see any generalizable, I don't know, patterns or trends with that subset of folks?
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, from the folks that I've worked with, when I think of a model development director, there have been folks who are very mission driven, but also have a motor. They have a self-driven motor to get their work done. And almost every top performer I know of, and I can think of, a few folks that we both know, like my friend Dale Wright over at Illinois. I mean, you don't have to tell him that I'm expecting X. I mean, he expects that of himself to get it done. And so, to me, it goes back to talent management. It goes back to looking. You have to you have to realize what kind of team you want to have.
All right, well,
And
Kim, it's 2:00 Eastern on a Tuesday. For the folks out there that have a motor, I love that expression. What are the people with a motor doing versus the ones who maybe need to get that motor? I mean, what does that mean in your world?
Well, in my world, this is somebody who's looking at their portfolio, and they're looking at where who they've engaged this week, who they need to follow up with, and they're doing some due diligence to prepare for the next day, the next call, and they're trying to wrap things up and position to tomorrow, today. You know what I mean? You're always thinking ahead. You're always working. Okay, so how many proposals do I have in the pipeline? Who that need to be delivered? Which donor do I need to go and steward because of their past giving, or which faculty do I need to go talk to discuss X project that we're working on that I would like to get going. So these are people who are thinking. They're always thinking, what can I do to help better prepare for tomorrow and be ready for what comes in front of me, as opposed to those that just sit and wait for prospect research to feed you information, or somebody else to do the legwork, and they say, oh, hey, Brent, here you go. And so it's a self-starter, self-driven person who came to an organization for the right reason, and they hold themselves at a higher standard than others. I mean, I found many of the best people that I've worked with, they're actually more critical of their own work. They are, and they come to me and say, "Well, oh man, I had a bad year. I was trying to hit $10 billion, but it came out 6, 7." I said 6, 7. That's more than you've done ever. I mean, that's great. No, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. We got to do better. And those are the folks that I really appreciate.
I love that. Well said. Tell me a little bit about the importance of leadership at the institution. You've talked a lot about the mission, but I know that Ricky at UNLV is an important leader, right? And so, how do you think about who you want to work with, who you want to work for?
I got to tell you, leadership is absolutely critical. I like working with people who are compassionate. They have a clear vision of where they see an organization going, and they have clear expectations as what they expect of the team. And so one of the things that I appreciate about my current president is that he's a seasoned a professional, has been in this field for a long time, worked at the highest level. He empowers us as leaders to lead, okay? And he's there to provide, cover, to help steer the ship. But at the same time, he trusts the people that are in leadership positions to lead. And that's absolutely critical. There are some leaders who micromanage, they don't have a clear vision, or they're simply just focused on bottom line. People come second. And the leaders that I aspire to work with is like folks that I have right now, who are passionate about the mission of the institution. All of us were beneficiaries of philanthropic gifts that enable us to get an education. And so this is not just a job, to Ricky or Dr. Whitfield, university president. This is a mission, and so that translates in how they treat the team and how they're focused on ensuring that our entire organization is sound. And so, I couldn't stress enough the importance of having a leader that you're aligned with.
You mentioned Ricky, you've mentioned Dale. I mean, who are some of the other people just in the sector that you think highly of, that you think, have that passion, commitment, motor, really make an impact? I mean, who do you consult with as peers in the space?
So Barry Benson, who's Vice Chancellor for Advancement at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. He was a former Boston colleague of mine in Arizona, but somebody I think very highly of. Jim Moore, President and CEO of University of Illinois Foundation. Dexter Bailey, VP over at Caltech in California. Somebody who I go back to Berkeley with. I mean, we've been through this journey for many moons. Floyd Akins over at Michigan State, somebody who I deal with. Angelique Grant from the Aspen Leadership Group. Rod Kirsch, who used to be the senior vice president for development at Penn State. I mean, you look at what Rod has done, even though he's retired now. There are many folks around the country who are vice presidents or AVPs that all came through Penn State. What a legacy. I mean, that to me is something that I hope one day I can have the same impact in having all these people that are successful that I helped, open the doors or develop their career that way. And I can think of, so many wonderful people that I've met in this journey. I mean, one of my friends, Danny Nicholson, he used to be at Coastal Carolina years ago. And, Danny could have gone and worked at any other university. But he liked to work at places like Coastal Carolina, Carson Newman, Glenville State in West Virginia, because to him, it was about the mission, serving the students. I mean, today, he retired from frontline work, but he and his wife, run this, home for, youths, who are challenged. And so that's somebody who has true commitment to the field of advancement and the mission of university advancement.
I love it, Kim. Great examples and a reminder of just how tight-knit and connected this sector is, and how your relationship from 20 years ago continues to compound and be mutually beneficial in an ongoing way. I got to ask, we've spent some time recently just talking through the future of the sector. I mean, when you think about where we are now, what's holding us back? Where is the sector over-investing? Where are we under-investing? What are some of the big ideas that you're thinking through here in 2021?
So from my perspective, I think, what I've seen is we've invested so much in throwing our bodies at situations, right? Higher. And, a lot of it has been in response to campaigns. People are launching campaigns, say, okay, well, add 20 people, add 30 people. But the infrastructure that it takes to support that has not been, we have not invested much in that. If you look nationally, you look at how many programs are scaling up their frontline hiring, and then look at on the flip side of that, how are they scaling up operationally to be able to support all that? Okay, and I'm not quite convinced that those two are balanced. And so, with that in mind, post-COVID, we have some significant challenges that our institutions need to address. Okay, and whether it's student access to education, because those students that were economically challenged pre-COVID are going to be even more challenged post-COVID. Okay, whether it's improving your campus infrastructure, what is that going to look like? Or maybe you want to pivot to different aspects of research and economic development. All those are things that are happening in a space where some private institutions are severely challenged because they're very tuition dependent. And then those of us who are state affiliated, our budgets are also going to be interesting, right? So folks look at advancement as the solution provider. And so we need to come up with ways to engage a broader spectrum of prospective donors quickly, which means we got to think about embracing new technology, new platform, like your donor experience officers as a way to help us solve some of these issues of pipeline building and the capacity increase in a shorter time frame than 3 to 4 years that it takes you to really get going. And well,
it's just interesting what you hinted at, which is the needs that we had before COVID are likely more acute post-COVID. I would also argue that for the top of the pyramid, now obviously your community is uniquely connected to the hospitality and travel sector in Las Vegas, but in general, when you look at the strength of public markets, of private markets, of real estate markets, there's been a lot of wealth created at the top. Mm-hmm. The needs are more acute at the bottom. And that's where I do think there's a unique opportunity for us right now to really connect that need and potential impact to wealth, also taking into account the fact that we've just gone through a once in a lifetime technology wave of adoption. So donors are more accessible than ever before, in general have more wealth than ever before. The need is more acute than ever before. That should be really prime, I think, material for incredible philanthropic outcomes. But we got to have a motor.
Absolutely. I think so too. I mean, I see it here and I see it, as I talk to colleagues around the country. There's some great excitement about the future in terms of we haven't gone through this, pandemic, once in a lifetime event. And as you look ahead, the role of higher education becomes even more critical. And so what an awesome time to be part of the new wave of, the new normal, so to speak, where we're thinking about how can we best help our institutions meet their mandates? How do we best partner with our community partners and other stakeholders to really build a university that we can all be proud of, build institutions that are going to be those game changers. And I think, adapting new technologies and ways of engaging people is going to be absolutely critical for us to be able to, to meet these awesome goals in a timely manner. I mean, we don't have 5-10 years to think about things. I mean, we kind of need to address the challenges head on sooner.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm biased. Obviously, I believe strongly in the potential for technology, but I would argue that I'm much more on your side of the equation, which is it's all about the people. It's about the leadership. It's about the mission, the vision, and how can the tech align and support and streamline it. But the tech is not going to solve the problem. It's the tech combined with the right strategy, the right goals, the right people, the right mission, values, leadership. And so, it's really fun to have conversations like this. Let me just change topics a little bit. And I know we need to conclude here pretty soon, but you've been at a lot of places. I'm sure you've done a lot of trips, as a frontline professional yourself. Are there any visits you've been a part of that really stand out as being memorable, or gifts that you've closed that just, I don't know, after hundreds of experiences like that, you come back to as being some of your real highlights in your career?
Yes. So when I was at University of Missouri, I was, covering the School of Law amongst a number of different responsibilities I had. So I recall one of my most memorable times, was a trip I took with my former dean to Florida. Now, every year around February, the university has alumni events in Naples, and then one down in Tampa, and sometimes we'll throw Fort Lauderdale just, for the sake of it. So my dean and I leave Columbia. We go stay by the St. Louis airport. We get there, about maybe 8, 9. We have dinner, and then we catch a flight at 4 a.m. to go down to Tampa. And so we land. We had a lunch visit right away, but that person ended up changing. So we had to call somebody else, and then we went and had lunch, went to an alumni event in Tampa, then got on the plane to fly to Miami. Got there, about by the time we hotel about 2 a.m. in the morning. Then got up at 5 to go have coffee at a law firm in downtown Miami. Then drove to see one of our trustees in Key Largo and spend this fabulous afternoon by the lagoon, watching the ships go by, eating amazing seafood and really getting to know this gentleman. He was so excited that we had come down to see him and continue to thank him for a few $1 million that he has given to the institution. And so we had an amazing time just connecting with him, and a lot of this time I'm the one driving, right? So that comes with the territory. And so we finish our lunch at about 3 o'clock, had to drive back to Fort Lauderdale for another meeting, then drive across Alligator Alley to Naples to have dinner by 9 p.m. so that we can be ready for an alumni engagement event at the country club the next morning at 10. So that was 3 days. And we did all that. And at the end of that alumni engagement event, the next day, we drove back to Tampa, and we're back in Missouri by midnight that day. So I tell people to say, so you probably slept, 12 hours the entire time. I said, yeah. But sometimes
Kim, that sounds like a different world after the year we've had. What you just described is so foreign. Do you think that kind of itinerary will come back?
I do.
Okay.
I mean, because we were dealing with a multi-million-dollar donor. Okay. When it comes to those principal gift level donors, there's no substitute to in-person. I'm sorry. I mean, some people may disagree with me, but you have to form those relationships where you're looking at each other in the eyes and you can engage authentically, and you really have a good feeling about the two of you and how you're engaging. So I think at the high level, we're still going to have to travel to go where our supporters are. But I do think, though, overall, as we think about a regional strategy or what have you, there's going to be a lot more deployment of remote digital engagement than the one-on-one business. To me, that's, somebody asked me the other day, said, what do you think? How do you think technology is going to change development? You guys are never going to travel. You're going to just be at home and do everything via Zoom. I said no. I disagree, and most people that I know do disagree as well. What I see is there's going to be a lot more utilization of technology and digital engagement at the annual level and at the entry level major gifts. But when it comes to the higher sort of net worth individuals, we're still going to be doing the same good old development work.
Yeah.
And
Look, I agree with you, Kim. I think it's what I hope things settle out something along the lines as follows. We're going to be able to have more truly personalized, authentic touch points per donor per year. So for that individual in Key Largo, who's a multi-million-dollar principal gift individual you're stewarding, do you still need to go and have seafood periodically with that person? Absolutely. But instead of just relying on that in-person experience in Key Largo, you could then schedule the Zoom call with the athletic director or the quick conversation with the dean and weave in more touch points that are a blend of physical and digital over the course of the year. And then I think there's a whole bunch of donors who are never going to get that field visit, who are getting no personalized engagement today that we can bring into the fold sooner in their donor life cycle without hiring an army of gift officers. And so I hope it's that kind of hybrid blend where we can still do that really high ROI field travel, but go much deeper in the giving pyramid by sort of activating some of these new channels.
I agree. I think you make a good point. It's interesting. You were asking about a memorable gift. I always tell people we are the recipient of our colleagues' work and generosity. Everybody in development, it's not a one-person thing; it's a team thing. When I was at University of Arizona, I started working with a gentleman who was CEO of a major corporation in Atlanta, and worked with him for a number of years. I would go see him. We'll have coffee, we'll have dinner. Got to know him, got to know his wife and family, and I remember when I first met him, I had 20 minutes. That's it. So I had to, have that passion conversation that our colleagues at Advanced Resources always talk about, the process of identifying the passion. And we got to the fact that he was really passionate about education and having come from the Southwest and how he was able to get to where he got because of the university. And I remember we got to a point where it was towards the end of my tenure. And he said, so what can I do to be helpful? I said, oh, love that. I said, well, right now we're working on developing this R&D center, and we're looking for some lead gifts to help us with that. Will you be willing to consider that? He says, yes, but right now, I just want to, I have a few things I need to take care of, but I want to do something that's really going to move the needle. I said, okay. So I ended up accepting a position elsewhere, and I was leaving. So I emailed him, hey, John, I just want to let you know this is happening. It's been great working with you. You'll be in great hand with Jeff Goldberg, who was my former dean, and Barry, and said, hey, it's been great. Look me up whenever you come to Atlanta. And, I wish you all the best. You deserve it. So fast forward about 4 years later, I'm talking to my former dean and provost at the university. He says, hey, by the way, congratulations. I said, for what? Well, we received $1 million with more to come from your work. Now, I've been gone from that institution for 4 years. And so I started to work. I got it going. But my colleagues that came after me took where I left off and across the finish line. And so and then we had a board member who died a few years back that myself and, Barry Benson, you name it, all these people have been working with for years, right? The university ends up getting a multi-million-dollar gift. I can't remember if it was like $20 million, almost, as I recall, years after he had passed. And so you look at that and you say, how? I said, well, because it's a team sport. We're each paying forward. The work that we're doing now is paving the way for the folks that come after us to be able to secure these transformative gifts that help an institution. And if you do development the right way, if you execute advancement the right way, you're going to have a lot of those stories. And if you look at institutions that are really, really good, that's what they do. You never lose touch. You're always being engaged authentically, and people are not thinking about, well, I just got to close this deal now while I'm here so I can move on. They're thinking about the donor and being donor-centric in working with the donor at a pace that is appropriate for them.
There are very few, businesses that have this dynamic of a pre-existing relationship, 5+ decades of opportunity to foster relationships, and revenue levels that could range from a $10 gift to a $100 million plus transformational gift. I don't think there's anything else like it. And that's why conversations like this are so rewarding. I always feel like I'm learning, and it's just such a unique, wonderful place to be in. And I just want to thank you for being willing to share your story. If our audience wants to stay in touch, Kim, what's the best way to do that? I know you're active on LinkedIn.
Yes, LinkedIn.com/Kim Nyoni is the best way. Can follow me on Twitter at Kim Nyoni. You can also, email me. It's simple, kim.nyoni@UNLV. And we'll be glad to connect. I mean, I think we're in an interesting period in our profession. And, our institutions are going to rely more and more on us being committed to the mission of the institution and helping them navigate this new quote unquote normal. So I applaud and appreciate every one of our colleagues across the country that are out there, pounding the rock and trying to make their institutions better than they found them. It's truly a remarkable field. I've enjoyed, almost 20 years of a career in this field, and I'm looking forward to many more years of serving, institutions of higher learning. So it's an amazing time.
Well, to everybody listening, I would encourage you, reach out to Kim. He's unbelievably accessible. Find him on LinkedIn, follow him on Twitter. He's definitely one of the people out there like you who care about the future of the sector and can do well and do good at the same time. So thank you, Kim. We really appreciate you sharing your journey with the Raise community.
Thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to more conversations.
Take care, Kim.